Hi, I'm Kim Lam, the Content Marketing Specialist for Covetrus, and today we're talking to Dr. Alex Hynes. Do you remember that movie Babe, about the farm animals and the pig that was raised by the sheepdogs? It was my childhood, and the movie had used real animals, but don't worry, no harm came to them. It is a timeless classic, captivating, charming, wonderful for both kids and adults alike. But this, of course, is not a movie review. It's just that with my guest being Dr. Alex Hynes, a senior vet based in Brisbane, a TV personality, and founder of Vet Success Academy, her link to the movie Babe is that her mother adopted the farm animals in the film's post-production so that they all had somewhere to live. And that was her childhood. It's no wonder that she became a vet. Even more so, the film's tale teaches a good lesson about why cooperation is better than coercion, and this could not be more relevant for the conversation that we had with Alex. We explore the key to juggling many balls, managing priorities, scheduling to success, and the importance of continued professional development. Hey Alex, welcome to Pause, Rewind and Play. Such a pleasure to have you on board. You're living in Brisbane, Australia, and you are a senior vet director and chief client officer for Accident and Emergency Services, so AES in Brisbane. You've also had
correct.
some TV stints as well, and you've got your own blog and everything. You've had quite a bit of time in the media. But let me get a sense of who you are. What brought you into the veterinary industry? What's your interest in animals, and how did you get into the emergency field?
Yeah, look, honestly, it wasn't my first choice, Kim. I actually started, I grew up with animals, so animals were always a really big part of my life. But I really wasn't thinking about making it a career. And I actually started off doing business economics degree, and I did that. And I actually secured a cadetship with one of the big banks in Sydney. And It didn't take long for me to realise that it just wasn't for me. That whole city commute in on the train each day, into the bank, sitting behind a desk. And I was just like this, I just couldn't imagine doing this for the rest of my career. So it was this really big reset to go, okay, what do I love doing? Because I'd really gone into business and economics because it was what I was good at. And so I thought about, what was important to me and what I could really see myself doing. And vet it was my sister that was always going to be the vet in the family. She, we both loved horses. We both spent our weekend riding, and my mum, we had a hobby farm, and my mum had cow. We used to milk the cows, and it was just that was my upbringing, was really just being surrounded. We had
that sounds like
eight dogs. It was awesome. I loved it. We had dogs running. We had cats. We had horses. We had I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Babe, about the sheep and the pig, and so when that was movie, and so that movie was actually shot near to where I lived in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. And when the movie was over, they needed somewhere for the sheep to go, and so my mum just loved animals. She's, we'll have them. So we had all the sheep from the movie after it. So it was just this hodgepodge of animals that we just collected over time. And, I really loved it. So when I really had to sit back and think, what do I want to do for the rest of my life, then vet just kind of came up again in my mind. I thought, well, what about that? And we had a family vet who used to come and look after our animals, and he said, I went to the University of Queensland, and it's a great vet school. It's up the north of Australia. Why don't you apply to go there? And so I did. And I got in, and even that was a surprise. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got into vet school. And this meant leaving my family. I literally got on a train, went up north to Queensland, which was like a day's trip away from where I lived, south of Sydney, and didn't know anybody. And I started doing a vet degree, and it was just like I knew straight from day one this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I came up to Queensland, and honestly, I've never left. I just love this part of the world. And when I finished my vet degree, because I'd always been a horsey girl, I loved the idea of just being out there treating the large animals, being on the road, travelling around to properties and things like that. And so that's what I did for the first few years of being a vet. And that was actually and I'll get to the emergency part in a minute, but it really set me up well for just thinking on my feet, because often when you're out there, you're on your own, you got to kind of improvise. And it really taught me a lot about just being resourceful and resilient. And so after I'd done that for a couple of years, I had the opportunity, like a lot of Australians did at that time, to head overseas and do the kind of locum thing where you work for a while and travel. And so I went to the UK, which is where I had grown up. And so it was a great chance to reconnect with my extended family. But interestingly enough, when I started doing large animals over in the UK, it was very different. We saw different diseases from in Australia, and honestly, Kim, it was the cold that got me. I remember
Which
being
we spoke
outside
about just before recording.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So the cold. Yeah, I remember this. There was this one night I was out in a paddock. I'd been working all day. I'd got this 4 a.m. call out to this downer cow. So it was a hypocalcemia dairy cow. And I was out in this field, and it was like 4 a.m. and I was holding up this bag of calcium and just shaking with the cold. And I just thought, no, there's got to be something else that I could be doing. So that was a real turning point for me, because I then literally went onto the recruitment websites and started scrolling through the pages, and there was a job ad for Vets Now up in Reading. And I thought, I've never really thought about emergency before, and I might give that a go. And it was honestly the one of those spur of the moment things that I decided to do that absolutely set the course for, what I think will be the rest of my career. And I just loved that ability to make a difference in the patients that you see in emergency. They come in, you never know what's going to walk through the door, and you don't know if you're even going to be able to send them home again, but you're there to make a difference in those first few hours. And that to me was just incredibly rewarding. So when I came back to Australia, so I after 5 years being in the UK, I came back to Australia, and I knew that I wanted to find an emergency hospital that I really wanted to be a part of. And one of my cohort, Rob Webster, that I'd gone through vet school with, I knew that he was working, or he had started an emergency hospital. So I kind of hit him up for a job and said, I've been doing emergency and come back, and I'd love to keep doing it. And so that's when I joined Animal Emergency Service back in, what would have been 2007. And and I've never left. It's just been an incredible
So it
journey.
really sounds like it was your calling, though. There's a lot of serendipity, and just like the breadcrumbs were there, the trails were there. It's like it was meant for you. And clearly you've been doing it over for a decade or two, and it just sounds awesome. Like you say, very rewarding.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm still fascinated at the affiliation with the Babe movie. Despite everything you told me, there's lots of interesting facts, but that one's pretty cool. And also, well done on tolerating 5 years of British weather.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I think you have to be somewhere else to really appreciate where you are. And every day when I get up here and I And like my mum lives in the UK still. My sister lives over there. So my whole family's over there, and I love going to visit them. But yeah, where your home is, it's really where you feel like you belong. And yeah, it's the warm weather is a big part of that for me. Absolutely. So
yeah, temporary visits.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not only are you in the emergency field, but you're also the founder of Vet Success Academy, which we'll get to later. So you are clearly, public educator, mentor, a lot of entrepreneurial things. You run a blog, you're on TV, you've got a book. There's just so many facets and multidimensional things going on. And it does make me wonder, because I feel like the vet thing alone and being an emergency is a lot to handle, and it's a lot of stress. So for many of our listeners, it would be really good to hear from you about how you juggle all of these balls. Like, what are you using as your emotional guardrails, and how are you managing everything?
Yeah, and it's such a good question. I do get asked this a lot, because there are a lot of facets to what I do. And I think one of the most important thing is that I really only take on things that I'm passionate about, because I learned so early in my career that there's really, life is too short to just be going through the motions, or to be doing things because you think you should be doing them or doing them for other people. And so I certainly, in terms of I'm a big scheduler. That would be one thing that I do say. My partner Gerardo has this saying that scheduling is sexy, and it absolutely is.
It does make a difference, though. I do it too, and I find that just having it written down and visible, you can just plan out your day better.
Oh, it's so true, because there's always going to be pulls on your time. There's always going to be other people who are demanding more of you, and if you don't have a clear schedule or a clear idea of what your goals are, then you just start to work to other people's priorities. So to make sure that I have enough time for my family, for Vet Success Academy, which I'm really passionate about sharing and educating the vet profession as a whole, but also, yes, the emergency side of things, my business as an emergency vet and as a leader in that company. These are all things that are really important, and time for myself as well. So I think that's one of the things that I, early on in my career, really didn't, I was all about achieving and contributing, and I really got to the stage where I was very close to burning out. And what I realized is that if I didn't take the time to put myself first, or to look after myself, I really couldn't be the very best person for everybody else. And so now, just as importantly, in my schedule goes the time for the things that I love to do. And one of those big things for me that helps me balance things is exercise. So that's where it's a real daily reset for me, and I exercise at pretty much the same time every day, which is kind of 5 to 6 in the evening. That's just what works for me. Yeah. And everybody knows who I work with that after about 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm not available for that hour between 5 and 6. And my exercise that I love to do is Muay Thai, so martial arts. The great thing about martial arts is you have gloves on, right? So you can't be answering your phone or texting or scrolling. So it's a chance to put down the technology, to really focus on something that I love, that really resets me for the day. It doesn't matter what the stress has been in that day. It doesn't matter what I've been through. This is an hour to just work on myself. And I can walk out of there, and sometimes, because our business, the AES, we open at 6 at night and we close in the morning. So a lot of the business issues happen in the evening. But once I come out of that session in the gym, I'm like, right, ready for whatever needs to be sorted out as a business owner, which can happen. So that's what I would say would just be making sure that you know what are the priorities in your life, and allocating the time and planning ahead so that you are focusing on your own goals and prioritizing what's important. So
yeah. And do you set like clear boundaries at the clinic? Because I know staff resourcing can be a huge issue, especially in the emergency field. Like, how do you ensure that you're not overworked at the practice? If a colleague or your manager or the director, they need you to be there, but you've not given enough time to yourself, in that scenario, what would you advise to people?
Yeah, and I think that's more relevant now than ever when we do have when we're dealing with COVID, when vets are seeing more pets. Like in Australia alone, there's 1 million more dogs in Australia than there were at the start of the pandemic 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of extra patients to service. People are just so much more aware of their pet's health, and we know all around the world that there is just so much more demand. And if you went into it thinking you were ever going to completely solve all the problems that are going to come up in the business, you just never will. There's always, if you've solved those problems, there's going to be bigger problems, going to be other problems come up. So I think it's important to let people know when you are available, to make sure that they have someone to call when it's your time away. And as a director group, we're really good at that, at making sure that the people who are in the hospital on the front line, if they need support or help, that they know who is the person to call for that at that time, and that the other people have the chance to have the time with their family so that they can be ready to support the team when they need it. It's not always easy. Certainly, even through Christmas, New Year, which we've just had, we had staff knocked out at very short notice, either through COVID or being close contacts. And one thing that we have implemented that we've never done before, and this is just an example of where you have to start to innovate to really make sure that nobody is, that you don't get overloaded. One of the things we've started to use is virtual health assistants. Now, we really have never used something like that before, where we've got scribes who are writing up the records and making sure that so the vets can do the vet work. And when it comes to then looking at their records, it's 80% done. They just have to make sure it's all correct, fill in a few gaps, and then it's done. And that has allowed us to be able to leverage the vet time more effectively. And that's something that really only came about because of the need to think outside the square and do things differently. So I think the advice I would give is about being clear about the boundaries and communicating it, but also making sure that people have someone else to, they know who to call when they need help or they need support, and also learning to innovate, learning to find other ways to get the job done.
Yeah, and I think that what that says to me is establishing clear expectations from both the manager side and the employee side. Essentially, just more effective communication and being transparent about what you can and cannot do. And like you say, you're not there to solve the world's problems. You simply can't. Like, we don't have the capacity to do it for 24 hours a day. You yourself,
it's so true.
Eat, sleep, exercise, all of those things. And I've had so many conversations with other guests on this podcast who've pretty much said, yeah, you really can't pour from an empty cup. So fill yourself up.
Exactly. So you can be the best person.
Yeah, for sure. The comment on getting technological assistance or more staff or more resource, whatever that may be, you also use our PIMS, our practice management system, RxWorks. And I guess it would be good to get a sense of like how that helps make your life easier or helps the clinic operationally. What does it give you more efficiency? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, and look, technology, I think for any business in this day and age is so important, and getting it right. The thing about technology is when it's working well, nobody thinks about it. It's only when it's not that, boy, as an owner, you know about it, and
Yeah,
especially in something like emergency, right? So emergency is nights, it's weekends. So the thing that we really value in RX Works is the round the clock support that we have. That if it's 2 a.m. in the morning here in Australia and we need support to get things going, or there's something that we can't figure out, that we have that. And that's really, really important to our team, because when we have clients there in front of us and we need to solve the problem for them and use technology to do that, they need that done right here and now. And so one of the things in my role, as there aren't a great deal of veterinary organisations out there who have a chief client officer, which is the role that I'm in at the moment. And that really tells you how important, or the importance that we place on client experiences. It's a really key focus for AEA, for the organisation that I'm with. And what we want to do is really to make that client journey as frictionless as possible. We want to streamline those touch points with the client, and it's something that we're always working on improving. And RxWorks has been a huge part of that, because digital communication has become, especially in this time of COVID, it has become even more important. So what we're now able to do is really be able to streamline those workflows. We're really able to use RxWorks to communicate with our primary vets. We're able to use it to with our like our patient histories, to make them as clear and as straightforward as possible. And it's just it has made a huge difference in being able to make us as efficient and make that client experience even better. So it's really been life-changing, for like, what would I say, like revolutionary for us, for sure.
Yeah, that's so good to hear, because I think whilst it could potentially be a big investment with any type of technology, the rewards can really be worth it. And I know that, quite a lot of the time, if let's say a new startup practice or even established practice might be looking for a new PIMS or telemedicine or whatever it is, one of the biggest limitations or frustrations is money and financing. That's reaping those rewards and understanding the impact that it's going to have in every area of your clinic, from client communications to stock control, for example. So
and when you add those things up, like what it can cost if you're not doing efficient stock control, what it can cost in hours of labour if you're not utilising something like a PMS system that helps you increase efficiency. It's kind of a false sense of efficiency to think to sort of skimp on the technology and try to work around it. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so outside of the clinic, you obviously have Vet Success Academy, which we mentioned earlier. What is that, and your role as an educator? How important is it for you and to teach others that continued professional development is essential?
It's funny, for the first years of, I think, any vet's career, you're very focused on your own accomplishments and your desire to kind of improve and progress. And then certainly for me, I reached a point where I really had felt very blessed and fortunate to get where I was in terms of having a fulfilling career, having the knowledge that I'd gained from the years of experience and from the people around me. And then there was just this overwhelming desire that both myself and my partner Gerardo had to really want to share our knowledge beyond just the vet professionals that were within our organisation, right? So we thought, how can we help the vet community across the world, and so that's really what was the basis for founding Vet Success Academy. We founded it, would be 2 years ago now, and video was a huge thing for us. So, you can have a textbook, and textbooks are incredibly valuable when you want to go and look something up, but there's something about being able to watch something on a video and be able to understand how to do a procedure, how to do a surgery. And so we just started to film everything that we were doing in the hospital. So we would film surgeries, we would film cases, and we're very fortunate in our hospital. It's really one of the busiest hospitals in Australia, emergency-wise. So we see all sorts of cases, and we just started to narrate these cases, narrate these surgeries that were coming into the emergency room, because of course you have no idea what's going to walk through the door. So it really took us over a number of years before we even founded the academy, and we built up this library of clinical resources over those years, and that has been an incredible way for us to then share that, really, to say, hey, you want to know how to do a splenectomy? Here you go. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to do a splenectomy, so that a new graduate vet who's out there can go, oh my goodness, I've got this surgery booked in. Let me go and watch this part of this video where they tie off the splenic artery. And you see it, it's not just a diagram in a book, it's someone actually doing that, and you get an idea. So that was kind of the clinical part of it. The other part of Vet Success Academy is what we call performance. And I think it wasn't really too far. It was probably when I stepped up into leadership that I realised that being a great veterinarian is much more than just being a great clinician, right? So it's all about how you interact with people, how you communicate. It's about productivity and leadership and self-care and all those other things and overcoming imposter syndrome, which is a huge thing for vets. Of
course, yeah.
And so all the things that they don't teach you in vet school, really, but if you can master them, then you can really accelerate your career. So we talk about all of those things in Vet Success Academy performance, and there's some people who love both aspects of it. There's some vets who love just really love the clinical stuff, and there's some vets, particularly those who are stepping up into leadership, who love the performance side, who really want to know how can I be the very best communicator in the consult room? How can I be the very best leader of my vet team? And that being able to see them and help them, it doesn't matter what country you're in around the world, it allows us to have that impact on any vet professional around the world. And that, I would have to say, is probably one of the most fulfilling things I have ever done. And it's just, it's kind of like what I hope will be my legacy to the profession, when I'm long gone. So
yeah, it is your legacy. You're doing such a service to the world, and I'm sure many people around the world are grateful for that service and the website. And what I'm hearing is that, there's like two sides to it, as you say, with the resource library, for example, the videos on how to perform certain surgeries. I had a chat with Danny the vet, and he's a trustee at Vet Life in the UK. And he was talking about the concept where with mistakes, it's okay, it's affordable to make a mistake. If you work in an office, you make a mistake on a spreadsheet, no biggie. But if you're a vet and you're treating an animal or you're doing a surgery and you make a mistake, that's a whole different thing. So I think it's really nice. It's wonderful that you have these videos for vets or graduates to refer to, just so that they have a reference point and just so that they feel like they can be guided. And then on the other side of it, it's all those softer skills, whether it's communication, high performance, whatever that may be. It just really feels like it's definitely a useful resource. So we will provide the link in the show notes at the end of this interview. But before we finish it off, I just wanted to round it with any advice that you might have, like top 3 tips that people can take away, whether they're a student or an experienced professional or a graduate?
Mm-hmm. Top 3 bits of advice. I think the first one would be probably very much what you said there about being prepared to make mistakes. Just have that learning mindset. I make mistakes every day, and I learn from them, and it's all about having a growth mindset. What did I learn from this situation? What would I do differently next time?
Yeah.
That would be the first thing. I'm a big fan of journaling. I journal at the end of every day, and I think about the things that I'm grateful for in the day, but I also think about the things that went well, that didn't go well, and how I want to do better next time. So I think the learning journey would be a big thing. The second thing that I certainly would speak to people who are, say, stepping up into leadership is that, leadership is not a popularity contest. And I think often as professionals, we want to go that next level. What is, I want to be a manager or something. And what we often don't see is that being a manager is not necessarily, it's not easy, right? And as people, we have this very strong desire to be liked. And when you're a manager, when you're in a position of leadership, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. You can't please all the people all the time. And so I think in your heart of heart, if you know that you've made decisions based on what is the best decision for the greater good, the organisation, whatever it is, then you have to be at peace with that. And so that would be the second thing I would say, more as a tip towards people stepping into leadership. And the third thing that I always really walk away from every day thinking is how can I do better, right? So how can I certainly, like, one of the things I always think about is that the 2 enemies of really being a successful veterinarian is if you become complacent and if you become arrogant, right? So I'm always thinking, how can I do better? And I'm always aiming never to be complacent. For example, at the moment, there's a lot of veterinary businesses who are having trouble staffing their hospitals because of COVID and because of the worldwide shortage of veterinary professionals. Yeah. And we're very fortunate that we are doing okay in that area. But if we were to be complacent and think that could never happen to us, that would be the start of the rot. So just always being aware that that you always have to that you could be that next person in that position, and how can you make sure that you every day are striving to do things a little bit better.
No, I think it's solid advice, because at the end of the day, if you're not kind of constantly reevaluating yourself, whether it's on a daily basis, weekly or monthly, you do tend to sort of wither away, don't you? And then no change happens. You cannot expect the same results with the same behavior. However, I'd like to urge that we don't equate constant productivity equals success, because at the same time, especially for vets, you need to rest as well.
So important.
Balance.
Yeah. And sometimes how can I do better is something that, say, for me, this is something that I realized. I went through a phase where I was trying to do a lot, and I thought, if I get up earlier and I stay up later, I can do more in that time, right? And what I've come to realize is that how can I do better includes making sure that I get enough sleep. And so I'm incredibly protective of my sleep now, because I know that that's how I can do better. It's not actually about, as you said, about productivity. It's not actually about, how much can I jam into the day. So, I absolutely would second that. Really, really important.
Yeah, and with your personal life, you're obviously a new mum, and the festive period is over. So like you said before we started recording, it was just crazy, and you absolutely prioritized your sleep. So I'm very glad to hear that. And yeah, thank you for your time. This has been really valuable. As I said, we will put all the links and relevant notes in the show notes. And hopefully we'll speak to you again soon. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Overall, I can hear Alex's passion for making things work in the right way, and how she prioritizes things by making it abundantly clear to herself and to others that need to know. The transparency and communication is key to managing time and priorities better, as well as having the accountability. And I do agree with her that all of us, not just you vets, but as humans in general, we can remain alert, and complacency and arrogance can indeed be our enemies. So it always pays to be reflective and mindful, just so that you're not missing a beat. You learn from others, and we can learn from mistakes. In the show notes, we have links to useful resources that can help you do these things better, as well as a link to Vet Success Academy.